When I first qualified as a personal trainer, one of my first ever business coaches said to me that the idea of self-sabotage doesn't exist. I'm just going to take a moment to explain that and then explain how I think it can relate to binge eating disorder. And what my business coach meant was that the actions we see as self-sabotage are basically our brain or conditioning or habits, whatever word you want to use there, making us choose a short-term immediate payoff or reward over a longer-term bigger payoff. He used the example of someone dealing with substance abuse who's on the road to recovery. That's a little bit darker than the kind of tone I am for, so I'm going to go for something a little bit lighter. So on that note, a pretty good example would be procrastinating when you've got some work to do or you need to study for something, especially if it's something that you know you're going to want to or need to do eventually, but it's going to take some work and some effort, whereas much easier, and it kind of numbs that thought of discomfort to just sit there, open your phone and go on Facebook or Instagram or open Netflix or something like that. So we end up automatically or subconsciously, I guess, choosing that instant payoff rather than going through that discomfort for that longer term goal. In terms of applying that to binge eating disorder, as someone that has binged regularly, I think we all know that we'll feel better mentally and physically if we don't binge longer term. But when you have a craving, it's incredibly uncomfortable. And I cannot emphasize enough how uncomfortable I find it. And the thing is that they're impulsive, persistent, and really nagging. Like, I can walk out of the house, I can go somewhere else, but those cravings will mean that I'm still thinking about the food that I could be having. When you look at it from that point of view, that giving into your cravings for that short-term reward or resisting for the longer-term reward, you can kind of see where I'm going with that. I think the toughest part is just getting comfortable with that feeling of discomfort. You know, for all the tactics and strategies to distract yourself from your cravings or deal with them head on, there's no instant fix. It's not like you can snap your fingers and that craving will suddenly disappear. It needs some thought, it needs some positive action, and it does unfortunately also need you to get comfortable with being with that discomfort for a little while. I guess we kind of need to learn to embrace that feeling of discomfort, accept that it's there, and accept that it's okay to feel it as well. Once you've done that, it's much easier to take action, and it's much easier to set yourself up to do something more positive that's not going to send you into a binge cycle. A few things that I've been trying, which I'd recommend experimenting with as well. And I'm not going to say some definitely work better than others because we're all different. But number one is directed meditation. So when I get a craving, I obviously have to get comfortable, in quotations, with that feeling of discomfort with that craving. But then I need to close my eyes, focus on how I'll feel if I don't binge or if I don't give into those cravings. And then also I started experimenting with some affirmations when I meditate as well. I'll come on to that in future, but it's something to bear in mind as well. Part of that directed meditation is focusing on that bigger satisfaction you'll get from not binging. When you have a craving and you give in, it satisfies an immediate urge. But try and get your mind to focus on those future feelings, which you're not actually feeling yet, but you know you'll feel if you can get past those cravings. And while you're going through that thought process, you're also not immediately giving into that urge. So you're already kind of giving yourself that feeling. I don't know if that made sense, but let's go with it. You can also try changing your environment if that works for you. Get in the car and go for a drive, go for a walk, or just do something to get out of where you currently are. You can try changing your physical state. My business coach, what he used to just, if he felt himself slipping into a procrastination cycle when he was working, he would just get up and do 5 push-ups or 5 burpees, and just to kind of shake himself out of that funk he was in. I actually tried that with kettlebell swings, and it does seem to work well for me. And most recently, I've also been trying aromatherapy. It's not really proper aromatherapy, I guess, but here's kind of the backstory behind it. So I went on vacation recently, and there was a shop which had a really, really nice fragrance in it. For some reason, something about that smell, it made me feel completely relaxed and completely at ease. And unfortunately, it was a clothing shop, and they didn't actually sell that fragrance. But I've read before about how retail places use smells to create sensations in your mind. In this case, it worked. When I got back, I found a very similar scent at a local shop and started using that in my bedroom, in my, I'm going to call this a studio, in my office, in the kitchen. And it's still very early days because I've only been doing it probably about a week or so, but early signs are good. It's just giving me that extra sense of relaxation. So if I start to feel those cravings building up, I can spray that fragrance, embrace that scent, and just start to feel relaxed again. And it seems to take the edge off those cravings quite well for me. To wrap this up, when you're dealing with binge eating disorder, cravings suck. They are incredibly uncomfortable, but you have to get comfortable with that discomfort for at least for a little while until you can find something else to do to take the edge off those cravings and start to manage them. For me, what's working at the minute is changing my physical state and the aromatherapy. That's what I'm playing with. But for you, it might be something else. Just to emphasize it again, it does mean needing to get comfortable with that discomfort.